I shouldn't be telling you this. God, I swore I wouldn't. There are things you stumble across that don't belong in this world. Things you can't unsee, can't unhear, can't unknow. I wish I could burn the memory out of my head, but it's stuck there, like a bad song on repeat, looping endlessly every time I close my eyes. It was a level, just a level in a game everyone thinks they know. Super Mario, bright colors, goofy music, the safest childhood escape anyone could ask for. But this wasn't that. It wasn't supposed to exist. It shouldn't exist. And yet it does. Buried deep where no one was ever supposed to find it. I found it. Or maybe it found me. You can laugh if you want. Call me dramatic. Say I'm making this up for attention. God knows I've tried to convince myself the same thing. But the cartridge is still sitting in a shoebox at the back of my closet, wrapped in black tape like that'll keep it from breathing, like that'll keep it from waiting for me. Because that's what it feels like. Waiting. Watching. Do you know what it's like to play something that starts playing back? To press start and feel the game pressing back? Not just your thumbs on plastic buttons, but something tugging at the other end. Something that knows you. Something that remembers you even when you try to forget it. I've tried to bury this. Tried to move on. Live a normal life. Play normal games like everyone else. But it creeps back in. The sounds, the colors, the way the screen looked at me. The way Mario, sweet, harmless Mario, stood there too long, his little pixel eyes unblinking, as if he wasn't waiting for me to move him, but for me to notice. And when I noticed, it was already too late. That's the thing. The real horror isn't the jump scares, or the glitches, or even the screaming music that bursts out of nowhere. It's the slow realization that you've crossed a line you can't step back over. A line Nintendo never drew. A line no developer ever meant to exist. If you're still listening, I need you to understand something. This isn't one of those dumb, haunted cartridge stories people swap on Reddit. I've read those too, and I wish to God mine ended with a cheap twist or a broken console I could toss in the trash. No, this follows you. It doesn't end when you hit the power button. You don't want to know what happens when you keep playing. You don't want to know what happens when you finish the level. And yet, here you are. You've got that itch in your head now, don't you? That itch to know more. The same itch that drove me to keep going when every instinct in my body screamed at me to stop. That's how it gets you. Not with monsters. Not with gore. With curiosity. So maybe I shouldn't be telling you this. Maybe I should have just kept my mouth shut and let this thing rot in silence where it belongs. But the truth is, silence is worse. Silence means it wins. Silence means it keeps feeding off me alone. And maybe, just maybe, if I tell you, it'll finally leave me. Or maybe it'll come for you next. When I was a kid, there wasn't much that felt safer than sitting cross-legged in front of a bulky old television, clutching that bright gray controller in my hands. For a while, my world was just pixels and sound effects, that cheerful ding of coins, the bounce of a green shell across the screen. Everyone I knew played Mario. It wasn't just a game. It was a shared language, the way kids my age measured time. Recess conversations were about who found the warp whistle, who made it to Bowser's castle, who swore they knew a secret trick to get infinite lives. Half of them were lying, of course, but that was part of the fun. There was an innocence to it, something pure in a way that I don't think games have anymore. No microtransactions, no patches, no endless updates. Just you, your console, and the cartridge that carried whole worlds inside its plastic shell, blowing on the contacts when it didn't work, tapping the top like that somehow helped. The magic wasn't just in the game, it was in the ritual. Mario was comfort. He was the closest thing to a guarantee in life. No matter how many times you died, there was always another try. No matter how high the obstacles looked, you knew there was a way to jump past them. The music never judged you. The bright colors never faded. For a few minutes, the rest of the world melted away, and all that mattered was guiding that little man with his goofy mustache toward the flagpole at the end of the stage. I remember the first time I found a hidden block, one of those floating question marks hovering just out of reach. The joy that surged through me when Mario's head hit it, and a vine sprouted upward into the sky. I swear it was better than Christmas morning. That feeling of stumbling onto something secret, something only a handful of other kids might know. Like the game was whispering to you. You see it too. Don't you? That thrill never really left me. It's why, even years later, I couldn't resist digging through bins of old cartridges at yard sales or thrift stores. It wasn't about playing the same game again. It was about chasing that rush, that hidden block moment, the chance that maybe I'd find something no one else had. But back then, I didn't think of it in terms of risk. I thought of it as discovery. Safe discovery. What's the worst that could happen? You find a glitch. The game freezes. Big deal. It's just Mario. Looking back, I realize how wrong I was. That sense of safety, of innocence, wasn't just a background detail. It was the shield that made what came later so much worse. Horror only works when you've been lulled into forgetting it even exists. And I was lulled. Oh, I was so thoroughly lulled. If you've ever replayed a childhood game as an adult, you know the feeling I'm talking about. That weird nostalgia that hits you like the smell of an old book or a familiar song from the radio. You go in expecting comfort, expecting warmth, and for a little while, that's exactly what you get. That's why when I first slipped that strange cartridge into my console, I didn't hesitate. I wasn't scared. I was excited. I thought I was about to relive the safest part of my childhood. I thought I was about to get that same hidden block rush again. Instead, I was opening a door that never should have been there. And once it opened, it never closed. I found it on a Saturday afternoon, the kind of day where the air is warm but not unbearable, where you wander without much purpose. The town was hosting one of those community yard sales, tables lined up on driveways, old furniture sun-bleached, VHS tapes stacked in milk crates, toys with missing pieces scattered on folding tables. It was at the third or fourth house down that I saw it. A cardboard box with the words $1 each scrawled in thick black marker. Inside, a messy pile of old cartridges. Most were the usual suspects: Madden, Tetris, a cracked copy of Donkey Kong Country. But one of them stood out immediately. The label was faded, almost rubbed clean, but I could make out the faint red letters: Super Mario Bros. 3. That alone should have made me happy. It was a classic after all. But the more I looked at it, the more wrong it felt. The paper label wasn't just faded, it looked water damaged, like it had been soaked and then dried out. There were tiny wrinkles across the surface, like veins. The Nintendo seal of quality was half peeled away. On the back, written in shaky black pen, were 3 letters. At first I thought it was a name, but the writing was uneven, smeared Dawn. I remember turning the cartridge over in my hands, running my thumb across the gouges and scratches. The plastic itself felt different. Not heavier, not lighter, just used in a way that didn't match the others. Like it had been handled too much. The guy behind the table noticed me looking. He was older, maybe late 50s, wearing a faded baseball cap and a sunburn that stretched across his neck. "You want that one?" he asked. I shrugged. "Yeah, I think so. Mario 3, right?" Something flickered across his face. He shifted just slightly. Yeah, that's Mario 3. Worked last time I tried it." His tone was casual, but his eyes weren't. They lingered on me a second too long, like he was waiting for me to change my mind. I dropped a crumpled dollar on the table. He didn't reach for it right away. Instead, he leaned closer and said, almost under his breath, "Don't play the last file." I froze. "What?" He straightened up quickly, shook his head. "Nothing. Just don't worry about it. It's old. Might not even save anymore." He pushed the cartridge back, toward me like he couldn't wait to get rid of it. I should have asked more questions. I should have walked away. But I didn't. Because why would I? It was just a yard sale, just a beat-up old cartridge. The weirdness barely registered. If anything, it just made me more curious. When I got home, I set the cartridge on my desk and just looked at it for a while. My other games were lined neatly on a shelf, their labels bright and intact. This one looked like the odd sibling, the one no one wanted to sit next to. There was another thing I noticed, something small, but it stuck with me. Around the edges of the label, right where the paper had bubbled up from water damage, there was a faint reddish tint. Not ink, not marker, just red. I told myself it was rust, or maybe dye bleeding out. But even then, part of me knew better. Still, I wasn't scared. Not yet. At that point, it was just an object. Strange, yes, but not threatening. The thought of plugging it in actually made me excited. It felt like unwrapping a mystery. Like maybe this cartridge held some rare glitch or hidden Easter egg I'd never seen before. I didn't know it yet, but the second I slid that cartridge into the console, something in my life shifted. Something opened, and once it opened, it wasn't going to close. When I finally slid the cartridge into my old console, I half expected it not to work at all. Most yard sale finds are dead on arrival, and honestly, part of me would have been relieved if it had been. But the second I pressed down on the cartridge and hit the power switch, the screen blinked to life. The familiar title screen filled the room. Super Mario Bros. 3. At first glance, it looked exactly how I remembered it. Mario in his raccoon suit, standing proudly, the words bouncing above him, that cheerful music chiming through the speakers. And for a few seconds, I felt that wave of nostalgia wash over me. Comfort, safety, the smell of my childhood bedroom, the afternoons I used to waste glued to the TV. But then I noticed it. The colors weren't quite right. Mario's red overalls looked too dark, almost maroon, and the background sky was a shade too gray. It wasn't the kind of difference you'd expect from an old cartridge or a failing TV. It was deliberate, like someone had dialed the joy out of it. I brushed it off. Maybe my memory was playing tricks on me. Maybe I'd just gotten used to emulators with brighter palettes. I pressed start. The file select screen came up. There were 3 save slots, like always. But instead of blank files, all 3 already had names. The first was labeled help. The second, don't. The third, run. My thumb hovered over the controller. It was probably just some kid's idea of a joke, I told myself. People wrote weird things all the time when naming their save files. Maybe it was meant to be edgy. Still, something about the starkness of it unsettled me. No punctuation, no silly symbols. Just single, blunt commands. I selected the first file, help. The game loaded into World 1, and for a moment, everything looked normal. Goombas waddled back and forth. Koopa marched along their set paths. The grass was green, the blocks were brown. I almost laughed at myself for getting spooked. But then I noticed Mario. He moved a little slower than I remembered, like there was just a split-second lag between my button press and his jump. Not enough to make the game unplayable, but enough to feel wrong. And when I stopped pressing anything, when I let him stand still, he didn't fall into his usual idle animation. You know, where he blinks and fidgets a little, like he's waiting. No, he just stood there, completely still, eyes forward, hands at his sides, watching me. I tapped the controller. He didn't move at first. There was a beat, a pause, before he finally responded, like he'd been thinking about it. The background music was off, too. It started out cheerful, but within a minute it began to warp, just slightly, like the tape of a cassette being stretched. The notes dipped in pitch, then corrected themselves, then dipped again. It was subtle, but it made the whole world feel wrong. I kept playing, telling myself it was just age, just damage to the cartridge. But then I started noticing the enemies weren't behaving correctly either. Goombas didn't turn when they hit walls. They just kept walking, sometimes right off the edge into nothing. Koopa got stuck in corners, vibrating in place as though the game didn't know what to do with them. And the strangest part? There were no power-ups. No mushrooms, no fire flowers, no raccoon tails. Every block I hit was empty. The more I played, the more it sank in. This wasn't a glitch. This was intentional. The game wanted me to feel powerless. I played through the level anyway. At the end, instead of the flagpole, there was just a door. A plain wooden door, standing alone against the empty blue sky. That was when I should have turned it off. That was when I should have walked away. But I didn't. I pressed up on the controller, and Mario stepped through. The screen went black. For a few seconds, nothing happened. No music, no sound. Just silence. Then, in the faint hum of the TV, I thought I heard something, like static whispering, almost forming words I couldn't quite make out. Then the screen flickered back on, and that was when I first saw it. The hidden level. The screen blinked back from black, and for a heartbeat I thought the game had crashed. What appeared didn't look like anything I remembered from Mario 3, or any Mario game, for that matter. Mario stood alone on a flat stretch of ground. The texture was wrong, though. Instead of bright, cartoon grass, the tiles were bare. Just a washed-out gray surface, cracked and uneven, stretching across the screen. Above him wasn't the familiar cheery sky, but a muted, colorless expanse. No clouds, no sun, no horizon. Just a heavy emptiness, like the top of the screen was pressing down on me as much as it was on him. At the far right of the screen stood the same wooden door I'd seen earlier. Plain, out of place. I made him walk toward it. His movements were sluggish again, every step feeling like a chore. The sound of his footsteps wasn't the usual little boop, but a dull, dragging crunch, like he was walking on gravel. When I pressed up, he entered the door. The level shifted. The next screen made me sit forward, controller gripped tighter in my hands. Mario stood in what looked like a cavern. The walls were stone, but the textures were blurred, warped, like someone had drawn them and then erased half of the details. The background was darker now, a deep navy that wasn't quite black, and somewhere far off, beneath the silence, I thought I heard something, soft, distant, a kind of dripping sound. I moved forward. The cavern stretched on endlessly. No enemies, no coins, no platforms, just a flat expanse of stone and Mario's slow, dragging footsteps. After maybe 30 seconds, I expected to reach a wall or a pipe, but the path kept going. Screen after screen, the same dead space. That was when I noticed the music, or rather, the absence of it. The usual level theme was gone. All that played was a faint, almost imperceptible hum. At first I thought it was just the console buzzing, but no. It rose and fell, like breathing. I paused the game, but even then, the sound didn't stop. It stayed, faint in the background, pulsing like a heartbeat. When I unpaused, I pressed forward again. That's when I realized Mario wasn't the only one moving slower. I was, too. My hands felt heavier. My breaths came longer. The room itself seemed to lean in, growing smaller. And then I saw something ahead. At first I thought it was another door, but as I got closer, it became clearer. A pipe. One of those classic green warp pipes, but darker, corroded, like it had been left to rot underground for decades. The edges were jagged, almost sharp. I stopped Mario just before it. My thumb hovered. I didn't want to go down. But the thing about curiosity, the thing this game understood better than I did, is that it doesn't matter what you want. It's already decided for you. I pressed down. Mario dropped into the pipe, and the screen scrolled downward into another chamber. This one was worse. The ground tiles were the same washed-out gray, but the background was black. Not game black, not the kind of blank void you expect when a level loads wrong. This black looked thick, wet, and there were shapes in it. Every few seconds, I thought I saw something twitch just beyond the edges of the screen. Faint outlines of faces, or maybe masks. They'd vanish if I looked too long, but I knew they were there, watching. Mario walked on, slower now. His animation stuttered, frames missing, like he was glitching. Sometimes, when he stopped, his head twitched, not much, but enough for me to notice. And that sound, the hum, was louder here. Not quite a voice, not quite music, just a droning, endless note. I swear I could feel it in my chest, vibrating through the floor. I kept going, because what else could I do? That's when I saw it, far off, at the edge of the screen. A single block floating in the air. No mark, no decoration, just a gray cube. It was the first object I'd seen in this place that looked like it belonged in a Mario game. I made Mario jump. He hit the block. Instead of a coin, the block released a single line of text across the bottom of the screen. You shouldn't be here. My skin went cold. The words flickered, then vanished. The block crumbled to dust, collapsing into nothing. I stared, gripping the controller, waiting. Nothing else happened. The level stretched onward, silent except for that constant hum. I should have turned it off. I should have. But the path kept going, and something deep in me whispered, if you stop now, you'll never know what it was trying to show you. So I pressed forward. The hidden level opened wider, darker, and I followed Mario deeper into it, knowing I was already in too far. The further I walked Mario into that hidden level, the more I realized I wasn't just wandering through some secret stage. This wasn't a glitch or a programmer's inside joke. It was something else. Something that had no right being part of a children's game. The endless cavern stretched on until finally Finally, something appeared. At first I thought it was a toad. You know, the little mushroom-headed guy that always popped up to say, "Sorry, but the princess is in another castle." But as Mario got closer, I saw the sprite was wrong. The colors were drained, his cap gray instead of red, his eyes two black pits. When I stopped in front of him, a text box opened at the bottom of the screen. But instead of the usual cheerful line, it just read, "IT hurts." I stared. My thumb froze over the controller. The text box vanished, replaced by another. "Please, please." Then the sprite twitched, just once, a spasm of pixels, and collapsed into a heap. The sound that followed wasn't the light pop of an enemy dying. It was a low, garbled shriek that made the speakers crackle. I wanted to shut the game off. Every instinct screamed at me too, but I couldn't move. Not my hands, not my eyes. Something about that message felt directed at me, not at Mario. Like the little figure wasn't part of the game at all, but something trapped inside it. I pressed on. A few screens later, I saw her. Peach. Or at least, what was supposed to be Peach. Her sprite stood at the far right of the screen, in the same pose she usually took at the end of a world. For a second, relief actually washed over me. Stupid as that sounds. It was Peach. Maybe this was the ending. Maybe I could be done with this. But when Mario approached, the music, or what passed for music, stuttered. The hum warped into a jagged screech, like metal tearing. The sprite's face flickered. For one frame, she had her usual smile. The next frame, her mouth stretched impossibly wide, splitting pixel by pixel across her face until it reached her eyes. Then the sprite glitched, duplicating across the screen. Dozens of distorted Peaches, each with that gaping black void for a mouth. Text scrolled rapidly at the bottom. "No, no, 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 no." Over and over. Faster. Filling the screen until there was no room left for Mario. Then static. The whole screen broke into gray fuzz, the kind you get when an old TV loses its signal. But buried inside it, just for a fraction of a second, I saw words. "Leave." And then another flash, another word. "He sees you." I don't know how to explain what that did to me. It wasn't just unsettling, it was personal. Like something in the game wasn't just aware of Mario's presence, it was aware of mine. When the static cleared, Mario was standing in a different place. The ground tiles were melting, dripping down the screen in streaks. The background was still black, but shapes moved in it. Outlines of Koopa Troopas, Bowsers, but their bodies sagged, the shells dripping like wax. Every few seconds, one would slide halfway onto the screen, and then dissolve. I kept moving. I don't know why. Maybe I thought if I reached the end, I'd find some kind of answer. Maybe I just couldn't accept that this was all there was. Endless darkness, things that shouldn't exist, words clawing at me from inside a 30-year-old cartridge. Then I hit another block. I shouldn't have touched it. I know that now. But when Mario's head collided with it, the text box that appeared froze me cold. "You can't stop it." I dropped the controller. My heart was hammering. The game kept going. Mario kept walking on his own. For the first time, I wasn't in control anymore. His movements were jerky, unnatural, like a puppet with tangled strings. But he moved forward without my input. And as he did, the hum grew louder. Not just in the game, in the room. It vibrated the walls, my desk, my chest. Static flickered again, and this time the words were clearer, almost burned into my retinas. "Why are you watching?" I slammed the power button. The screen went black. For a moment, I just sat there in silence, staring at the reflection of my own pale face on the glass of the TV. My hands shook. My ears rang with that hum even though the console was off. And then, faintly, from the speakers of a dead television, I heard it. The one-up sound. That cheerful little chime. But stretched, distorted, drawn out until it wasn't cheerful at all. I yanked the plug out of the wall. Only then did the sound stop. I told myself that was it. I was done. But of course I wasn't. Because even with the console off, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever I had just seen, it wasn't finished with me yet. I thought turning the game off would end it. That's what you do when something glitches, right? You reset. You unplug. You walk away. But this wasn't a glitch. That night, When I crawled into bed, I couldn't shake it. My room was dark, but the silence was wrong. Too heavy. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, and swore I could still hear that hum, faint, like it was vibrating under my mattress. I told myself it was just my imagination, but then, from somewhere in the house, I heard a sound that froze me in place. The Mario coin chime. Soft, barely there, but unmistakable. I sat up, heart hammering. The console was unplugged. The cartridge was across the room, sitting on my desk. I forced myself to check. Nothing was on. The TV was dark. The NES sat lifeless. And yet, the sound had been real. That was the first night I dreamed about it. I was back in the hidden level. Mario stood in front of me. Only this time I wasn't holding a controller. I was standing behind him, like I was inside the screen. The cavern stretched on forever, the hum rattling in my bones. Mario turned his head. Not just a little idle animation twitch. He turned his head all the way around to look at me. His mouth opened, pixels tearing apart, and instead of words, the sound that came out was the one-up chime, over and over, until it distorted into something like a scream. I woke up gasping, sweating through my sheets. But the worst part wasn't the dream. It was the silence when I woke, because I could still hear the hum. Over the next few days, it escalated. Lights flickered when I walked into rooms. Once, while brushing my teeth, I looked up into the bathroom mirror and swore I saw the faint outline of that gray pipe in the corner of the reflection, pulsing like a heartbeat. And the colors, God, the colors. Red and blue. Always red and blue. The shades of Mario's outfit. They started showing up everywhere. The LED clock on my nightstand glitched one night, every number flashing red and blue until I yanked the cord out of the wall. Traffic lights seemed to linger on those colors longer than they should, holding me captive at intersections. Even my laptop wallpaper corrupted once, filling with jagged streaks of those two colors before it crashed. I told a friend about it, half joking, half desperate. He laughed at first, said I was just tired, stressed, seeing things. I almost believed him, but then I showed him the cartridge. He picked it up, turned it over, squinted at the faded label. Man, this thing looks like it's been through hell. And then he saw the writing on the back, the smeared letters, Don. He frowned. That's creepy. Where'd you even get this? I opened my mouth to answer, but before I could, the TV behind us crackled on. Neither of us had touched it. The screen lit up with static, and through it came a voice, low, garbled, like someone trying to speak underwater. Only one word made it through. Run. We bolted. I ripped the plug out again, heart slamming against my ribs. My friend tried to laugh it off, but his hands were shaking. He muttered something about old electronics and interference, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. When he left that night, he said, Don't play it again, okay? I promised him I wouldn't, but promises don't mean much when something else is pulling the strings. The dreams got worse. I stopped seeing Mario. Instead, I saw the level itself, the endless stone caverns, the shapes moving in the dark. Sometimes I'd wake up standing in my hallway, not even remembering leaving my bed, and swear I could hear dripping water, like the sound I heard in the cavern. The worst was the night I woke to find my TV on again. No game, no static, just the hidden level, gray ground, black sky, and Mario standing there waiting. The controller was on the floor, untouched, but his head twitched. His eyes flickered toward the screen, like he was aware of me even outside the console. And I swear to you, just before the screen went black, I heard the sound of footsteps in my room. Not in the game, in my room. That was when I realized it wasn't confined to the cartridge anymore. It was here, and it wasn't letting go. I couldn't pretend anymore. This wasn't just a weird cartridge, or a corrupted ROM. It was something older, deeper. A doorway. I stopped sleeping. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt myself sliding back into that cavern. I'd wake up with the hum rattling in my chest, my ears ringing, convinced that if I just stayed awake long enough, maybe it wouldn't find me. But curiosity is its own kind of hunger. And eventually, I started looking for answers. The internet is a graveyard of rumors and forgotten forums. It didn't take long before I stumbled across threads that had been scrubbed, cached pages buried under layers of dead links. All the same words came up. scattered across years, across continents. The hidden level, the gray pipe, the words in the static. Different usernames, different stories, but always the same pattern. Someone finds a cartridge that doesn't behave like the others. They talk about hearing the hum, seeing messages that feel aimed at them. And then, always, their posts stop. The threads go dead. One comment stuck with me. The user's name was long deleted, but their words were cached. It's not a level, it's a room. And once you've seen it, you're in it. I don't know if that was supposed to be a metaphor, but it doesn't feel like one. The more I read, the more I realized something terrifying. The game isn't broken. It isn't haunted. It's hungry. Every time someone boots it up, every time someone stares too long into that endless cavern, it pulls a little more of them inside. Their fear feeds it. Their attention feeds it. That's why the messages feel personal. Because they are. And it doesn't stop when you unplug the console. Once you've seen the hidden level, it sees you back. I tried to warn myself off, but even as I write this, I can hear it calling from the corner of my room. The cartridge sits there on my desk, quiet, but I swear the gray pipe is burned into my vision. Sometimes I see it in the corners of websites, the edges of photographs, like it's bleeding into the rest of the world. I don't think destroying it would help. If the others I found online tried, it didn't save them. Maybe it's not even in the cartridge at all. Maybe the cartridge is just the bait, and now I've made the same mistake they did. I've told the story. You don't understand how dangerous that is. The more you know, the closer it gets. That's how it spreads. Through memory, through words, through the act of watching. So if you're hearing this, if you've listened this far, don't go looking for it. Don't search for gray pipes. Don't click through old ROM hacks. Don't try to find a level. Because the second you do, it'll find you. And if your screen flickers, if you hear a hum just under the silence of your room, don't check. Don't look. Because if you look, you'll see the words I did. The ones burned into the static. He sees you. And once you see them, there's no way back.